Question 2 reads, a business that is expanding is considering using debt to fund the planned projects. So they plan to arrange a financing first, then to consider expansionary projects once they know what money is available. Comment on this adopted strategy in view of your understanding in financing decisions and investment decisions that a modern manager is faced. Question. There are 4 key managerial decisions that a financial manager must have. Can you mention them? There are 4 key decisions that a financial manager must have. What are they? Number 1. What are the key decisions that a financial manager must have? Yes, Janice.
Okay, can I try?
Fine. Oh, okay.
One of them is financing decisions.
Yes.
Financing decisions, investment decisions, and dividend decisions.
Yes, financing decisions, investment decisions, and dividend decisions. So under financing decisions, what do we really look at?
We're looking at financing the businesses, whether we're going to use equity or debt, or we're going to use retained earnings.
Talent. And when we're dealing with investment decisions,
here we are looking at which projects we're going to embark on.
using
Among the
yes,
which projects we're going to embark on using the finances that we found.
Okay, according to the appropriate investment decisions. Okay, there's an investment decision making process. Then amongst alternative, we talked about having to use with the NPV, IRR, all those ones. But now this question particularly is still on unit 1 that we're looking at just 2 elements from this statement. Just looking at what? 2 key elements, which are to do with the question. We're being asked to look at only 2 key elements, financing decisions and what? Investment decisions. So we need to actualize that in the context of this question. So this company doesn't know what to do. Firstly, they plan to first source the finances, then also consider what projects they will go on. So now let's look at, in the context of this question, what steps or measures they should take in financial or financing decisions. So this is what we're talking about. Number 1, we said under financing decisions, it's critical to understand that financial managers are there to maximize the rate of return on behalf of the shareholders. So under financing decisions, they must have what? The capital budgeting process. They must look at the tools, looking at the feasibility of the project using the NPV, IRR, and the profitability using the profitability index, etc. So a conservative approach must be adopted by the financial manager to ensure that you evaluate the risks and the return before you commit what? The fund in the long term. So an emphasis is what? On the capital appraisal methods. So here, strategic decisions must be made that will shape the future trajectory, competitive position of the company. Now, in maintaining this, there should be proper investment decisions that must be considered to sustain the growth of this particular company in question. So that is what we discussed. So we need to synchronize investment decisions with the company's long-term objectives. I think that is what I was trying to labor hard to explain. That is on the investment decision. right together. Then we can now go to the other part. So that was the investment decision. We go to that was the investment decision. We go to financing decisions. So under financing decisions, we must strike a balance between debt and equity. So decisions as to whether to raise capital from the market or plowing them back must be taken critically. So the cost, we say there's a cost that is involved when we are borrowing, that is debt finance. So let me just table down what I summarized. So financing decision is an instrument in necessity, is stating capital for various projects in a company. So the financial manager must strike a balance between debt and equity. So this decision to raise capital from the market will involve considering factors like what costs are we going to incur if we're going to borrow, what risk is there, and how available are these funds. So also the financial manager must balance a mix, which we call what? Capital structure. A bit of equity, a bit of preferred stock, a bit of retained to maximize profitability. So that's what we call cost of capital. Also, the financial manager must also allow the company to undertake strategic initiatives like what megas and acquisitions and capacity expansions. These ones are all attributed to expanding the company. So sound financial decisions must also contribute to a company's stability, sustainability, and profitability. So when we align these decisions to the objectives of the company, not only save for the short term, but for the long term. So there should be an optimal mix of these decisions. So the impact that it may have on the shares, which are equity, and the impact that it may have on the bonds which we are borrowing, these decisions, how will they impact? Because the question had that aspect. So number one, if we're going to increase the share price, which reflects the market's positive outlook on the potential returns from high-risk projects, this will indicate that investors will have confidence in the company's growth, so more investors will come in. But if we're going to decrease the price of the corporate bonds, it also signifies that the bondholders will be concerned about the increased default risk and the associated high-risk projects. So investors will perceive a project that has potential threat to the company's financial stability, leading to skepticism. So there should be careful analysis when it comes to making a decision where investments and financing are concerned. So you can wrap it up in your own way you would understand, but basically what the examiner is trying to get from you is understanding whether you know these decisions and how to apply them. So again, we go to another question. Remember, these are past exam questions. We talked about overtrading, overseas, etc. This one came the other year. So just on unit 1 here, why is a goal of financial management to maximize the current share price of a company stock? In other ways, why isn't the goal to maximize the future share price? And number 2, who owns a corporation? Describe the process whereby the owners control the firm's management, and what is the main reason that an agency relationship exists in corporate form of an organization. In this context, what kinds of problems may arise? 10 marks, 15 marks. Anyone able to attempt this question? Let's talk about a corporation. Maybe as we revise, we'll do a bit of some learning. Can somebody tell me the characteristics of a corporation? Who owns a corporation? And what is the main reason that an agency relationship exists? Anyone? From our accounting. Who owns a corporation? Describe the process where the owners control a firm's management. What is the main reason that an agency relationship exists in a corporate form? What kind of problems arise? Or look at a limited company in short.
It is owned by shareholders.
Hmm?
Shareholders are the ones that own the corporation.
Yes.
So the process is that they buy shares when there's what do you call it? Initial. Yeah, okay, they buy shares in the company and they
Mhm.
become owners.
Yeah.
So that those people there are many, so they cannot. Sometimes there are many, and sometimes they're big cooperatives. So they engage directors to run their companies who are agents.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the reason why we have this agency relationship, because directors are agent to shareholders.
Good. I'm loving the way it's coming out.
Mm.
Okay.
Then what was the next?
Yes. So
Then the problems are that sometimes directors may run the business in their own interest and not the interest of the shareholders.
exactly.
Mm.
We've answered everything,
Yes,
obviously.
sir.
So in a corporation, ownership is represented by the shares of the stock. Now, these shares are owned by either individuals or groups or entities who are called what? Shareholders. Now, these shareholders are the legal owners of a corporation and have the rights to receive a portion of their profits called what? Dividends. Now, these dividends, depending on the type of ownership, may vary. There are dividend owners who are called ordinary shareholders who receive the residue on a pro rata basis. We also have prior date owners who we call preferential shareholders who receive a fixed dividend when a dividend is declared. So however complex the structure would be, we need to know that shareholders are the owners, the ones who invest in what we call equity. The process through which people become shareholders or having total management ownership is typically through what? Buying of shares. And management is through electing what we call a board of directors. Now, these shareholders will exercise their ownership by voting. Only the ordinary shareholders will vote. The preferential shareholders have no voting rights, so they'll vote for a board of directors who are responsible for making high-level decisions. And these decisions are there to set an overall strategic direction for a company. Now, the board of directors will hire and oversee the management of this team, including the CEO and the executives who are responsible for the day-to-day running of the business. Now, this system is there to ensure that shareholders' interests are protected through the decision-making process. Are we together? Now, management will now come in to appoint amidst the shareholders and other experts who will represent their interests. Now, despite efforts that have been put to align, number one, the interests of shareholders, and number two, the interests of management. So there are two interests here. Shareholders want to maximize their own interests through dividends. Management also wants the growth of the business to be breathing, to say, look, this business is different from the owners. We also need to take care of it. So there is what we call an agency relationship due to the separation of ownership. We know that there's what is called separate legal entity where the owners and the business are different. So shareholders will now delegate the decision-making to management team. So you make decisions, because when we as the shareholders become all declaring dividends coming to us. So this creates what we call an agency problem or an agency relationship inevitably, where we have managers who are the agents. These ones are expected to do what? To act in the best interests of the shareholders, who are the principals. This relationship now brings about what we call a conflict. As managers who prioritize their personal goals, preferences, because they're the ones handling the monies. So there are several problems that will arise. She has mentioned, I think, a few. There's what we call the agency problem. We have the agency cost, the principal agent problem, the conflict of interest, and what we call risk aversion. Now, the agency problem is as follows. I think I have some note on that somewhere. Agency costs. These are problems that may have. So there are several problems that may arise due to this agency relationship. So we have what we call agency costs. So there are costs that are incurred by the shareholders to monitor and control the actions of management. So these costs are inevitably will ensure that they act in the best interest. They are paid a good sum. So agency costs. There's also a conflict of interest cost where managers will prioritize short-term gains or personal benefits like allowances, over long-term benefits of the company, like recapitalization. So this will lead to what? Will lead to decisions that are not in the best interest of the shareholders. We also have what we call the agency problem. So this refers to a conflict of interest between the principals, who are the shareholders, and the agents, who are the management, in terms of differing in their goals. Managers have their own goals, the agents have also their own goals. So we also have another problem, which is called risk aversion, where managers can be risk averse, where they'll be reluctant to undertaking risky projects because they're being scolded. They're considering managers, owners of the business, being economical and skeptical. So risk aversion comes about because of this tension to say you're overspending on risky assets, and also the fear of being held accountable. So these are the 4 key problems that would arise. Agency cost, which is a huge cost for employing managers. Conflict of interest, where each of these ones want to satisfy their own interest. Agency, the principal agent problem, where this one is an inherent conflict between the interests of the shareholders. Sometimes you discover that an individual is a shareholder at the same time the individual is also part of the board of directors. So this principal agent problem comes in different goals. Which goal will I go at this point? Do I go for me as a shareholder or me as a board of directors? Then also the risk averse, where managers will be reluctant to undertaking highly risky projects. So efficient corporate governance mechanisms such as independent board oversight, executive compensation structures are all tied to performance, transparency, and reporting. So these ones are essential to mitigating these challenges. That's why some institutions would want to be run by another board so that they are independent, because these problems are inevitable. Are we together? Like I said, we're still just at unit 1. We're just still at unit 1. You see how packed those goals I was talking about at surface level would bring in all these issues. Okay. So we end here for now. We're going to have another class later on to do some calculations. Unless there are any questions?